Welcome to the next training video session for the Bay Area Housing. Once again, I'm James Green, your perpetual host. Today what you're going to be learning to do is create a list from Dataquick's website and then print out labels from it. So the first step you want to do is go to dataquick.com. Come over here to the customer login box and click the drop down box, and in this case we're going to be using the prospect finder, and use your login information. You can find that on the top secret document. And by default we're going to usually use Refi Ready. And depending on the information that your supervisor gave you will depend on what's the best way to do this. For the example search, we're going to do by the city. And click on the select state and hit the letter M. And that'll bring up Maryland. Then hit enter. And then scroll through. Start with Annapolis, click Annapolis, and then click Add. And I'm going to click somewhere over here, and I know the next one I do starts with a D, so I'm going to hit the letter D. And you can see that jumps right down to the D's. This makes it a little quicker. Might even be able to hit DU. Let's have a little fun and see what happens. Yep, it did it. So I hit DU, and that jumped right to the first one. I'm going to do Dunkirk, Maryland. I'm going to add that one too. So you go through and add all the cities that you want for this particular list and click continue. The next thing is the code criteria. In this case we're going to do single family residence only, but there's several here, so you can see. There's going to be single family residence on this one. You continue, and then this is going to further narrow down what we're going to be looking for, and you'll have to get all this information, of course, from whoever the supervisor is. In this particular example though, the only thing we're going to do is change the first mortgage date. We're looking for first loan data, or you can call that the loan origination date, and my instructions were to pull up everything in those cities from the beginning of 2006 to the present day. The other criteria is that she only wanted the loans that had a minimum of $400,000 and then pretty much no maximum. But other than that, there's no further limiting criteria. So then we can just scroll down, hit continue. There's a way to filter out certain lenders, like let's say she says I don't want to have anybody that has a loan from Bank of America. Well, this is where you would do that. So you would like select individual lenders, that kind of thing. But in this case I'm not going to do that, and I haven't done that before, so I might make it worse if I try it. So now it's counted the number of records based on the criteria, and it's come up with 3,920. So at this point you always want to stop, contact the supervisor by email unless they have said that it's urgent, and tell them this has pulled up 3,920 searches. Do you want me to continue with this? If they say, nah, let's narrow it down, she might say, let's just do Dunkirk this time. That's way too many. So you do revise by geography. You can keep the city the same. Still Maryland. You want to click on Annapolis, because that's what we're getting rid of, and remove it. So the only thing that's left is Dunkirk. So hit continue. This is going to stay the same with single family residence. And all of this should stay the same. It would be wise to do a quick check to make sure that it really did. Of course, the only one you really are familiar with is right here, but yep, still says 2006, so probably safe to assume that the rest are still the same as default. So click continue, and all the lenders, and yeah, big change, only 289. So at that point you'll contact the supervisor again, unless she's giving you different instructions at that point, to just pull the trigger with it. But you want to make sure you contact her, because who knows what she might say. If she says 289 might be too little, she may say, well, just go ahead and pull in the other one. So once you get final approval that you can go for it, then click continue. And who knows, you may have to come back another day and do this, depending on how long it takes for her to reply, or unless it's an urgent matter and you do it through text or calling. You want to leave this checked. You want to make sure all the records come in. And not this one. Now we're going to go ahead and do the mailing labels and reports, but we probably won't be using that. But since you can't go back later and get them without buying the list again, until we fully establish that we definitely do not need these, go ahead and get them, because they're free, part of the package. So at that point then you would click submit, and you're going to have to leave this part to your imagination, because the only way for me to do that right now and show you is actually buy this list again, and it's not worth $90. But you can figure it out from there, I'm sure. What comes up is a screen similar to this when you click on order status. This comes up and it may say it's going to take a couple minutes to be ready. Even though it may say on here it will automatically refresh whenever it's ready for you to download, don't trust that, because I made that mistake and didn't work. So after a few minutes you come up here, and or short amount of time, and just hit refresh, and hopefully it'll say ready right there. It's important that you download it right away, because you only have a total of 14 days once you've got it to download it. And then if you haven't downloaded it since then we miss out. So it's very important to get that downloaded. Of course, once you have it downloaded to your computer, you have it forever. You don't have to worry about it. This is just downloading it from their site. And if you notice, the way to go back into this, if for some reason something happens and you want to download it again, close to the same process where you log in with the prospect finder, but then you just look over here and you'll see order status, and that's where you download it again later. Notice too that if you're doing a search that you will probably be doing many times, you can actually save a search, so you don't have to go in and change the parameters every time. I have not done that yet, but just keep that in mind for future references. So that's the first part. You've got the list downloaded. Now you're ready to open it up in Excel, and let me just go ahead and do this. Maybe I've already downloaded it. I think I did. Okay. So now that you've got the list downloaded, you're ready to get the duplicates gone, so that you can then merge it into Microsoft Word to print the labels out. So the first thing you do is you either go to your downloads folder, or most of your browsers, I'm using Firefox, most of the browsers you can find the downloads directly from the browser. It's usually going to a main menu and then finding an option that says downloads. But whatever you do, the main concept is that you're getting it from wherever it downloaded it to. And then double click on it. It's got a little miniature program that you're running. I don't want to make it so complicated. And it's going to extract the file. So continue. Choose where you want to unzip the file to. And there we go. It says it's successfully unzipped. So go into that folder, or you can open up Excel first, whichever you prefer. I'm going to go into the downloads folder and find it. And here it is right here. Let's open this dude up. So the first thing we're going to do is determine if there are any duplicates in here that we want to get rid of. So to do that, you click on the Data tab, and here's Remove Duplicates. And the way this works, you want to unselect all of these column headers. These are the heads of each column, and we're looking for the duplicate names. And in order to do that, it's important that you select both the first name and the last name, otherwise it will not work properly. Because, for example, you may have two Bennetts. If you just selected the last name and it's looking for duplicate last names, well, notice here's a Willie Bennett and here's a Robert Bennett. Well, it would get rid of either Willie or Robert, because all you had told it to do was get rid of buyer last name duplicates. So because we're choosing buyer first name and last name, it's got to have both the first and last name the same for it to consider it a duplicate. And since there were none in this file, I went ahead and faked one just so you can see it work. So I typed in an extra Willie Bennett, and you'll see how it's going to find one that way. So they're both selected. Click OK. It says one duplicate found and removed, and now you can see there's only one Willie Bennett right here. Alright, so now that you have the duplicates gone, we have to merge all of these columns together to make one address. Otherwise, I figured out that the label will not allow me to do it correctly unless these are all together. So this sounds more complicated than it is, but it's really not. Just follow these exact steps. I don't even understand the words that they use to do this, so what's important is you just click the buttons where you're supposed to and it works. So it's fired up about that. So we're going to create the column here. We're going to rename this column. This is where everything is going to merge together. So I'm going to call this address 1. So all of these columns will end up merging together and forming this column here. So once you have the very top cell selected, you want to go to Formulas, then click on Text and Concatenate. How you like that word, huh? And then what you're going to do is you're going to tell what to merge together. I'm assuming that's probably a fancy word for merge or something. So the first thing you're going to merge in there is the house number. So make sure you're on the same row and click the house number. Then you're ready to move to the second thing it's going to merge. So click on Text to box and click on Mail Direction. What that's referring to would be, they just put south, north, like North Taney Court. Well, some of them are blank, but some of them aren't, so we want to make sure we select that. And the next one will be the street name, and the next one is going to be the street suffix. So when you have all of those selected, you're done with that part. part of it, and you can even see an example of what it's going to look like. 1064 to We got a problem, don't we? We need to have spaces in there. We'll get to that in a minute. You're very sharp. You notice that. So now that we have it merged into one, double click on it to pull up the formula, and in order to have spaces go in there correctly, we actually have to do a little dance here. So you go just to the right of that first comma beside the F2 and put in a quotation mark, and then hit the space bar and another quotation mark. That's telling it to put a space in between those two things. So now you have the general concept. You just have to do it for all of them. Make sure you go after the comma, hit shift and then a quote, a space bar, and then put in the other quote. Go after the H2, shift, space, quote. And that should be it. I'll see if that did it. And I messed it up. One thing I forgot to do, I needed to put a comma after this. Sorry about that. So we're going back and putting commas after the last set of quotes. So just pay real close attention, because if this isn't exact, as you can see, it does not like you. There, that did it. So now we have spaces between all of it. So we've done our little address template. Now we got to tell it to do that for all of the ones in your spreadsheet. So this is going to be interesting. One way to do this, and it somewhat depends on your list. When you have a massive list, the best way to do this is make sure your formula is showing first. Now, follow me close on this. Once you double click on that, it'll bring up the formula. Then hold down the control button, and then while you're holding down control, hit enter and let go of both of them. Then the next thing you do, go over to the little black square in the corner and wait until your cursor turns into this little plus thing. Okay, what that does is it tells it to copy the formula that is in the box and adjust it so that it works the same for everything else. So right now I've just hovered over that. In order to copy it, like I said, then you have to double click on it. So now I'm going to double click, and when you do that, the idea is it does a whole bunch of them at once. Okay, you can also do it just by clicking and dragging it down. See, I'm just dragging it down, but that can take a long time when you have a huge thing. See, once I let go of the dragging, then it filled it in right. The problem with the faster way is that as soon as it detects a cell that's missing something, then it stops doing that. But sometimes you can get lucky and do a whole bunch of them at once. So let's try that way again. Just practice this a couple times. So I'm making the formula show. Every one of these steps is important. I would not waste your time. Double click on the bottom cell, make sure that it shows. Hold down control and then hit enter, and then you double click on this small corner thing, and it fills them in as far as it feels like it. So we keep on scrolling down, 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 and here it decided to stop. Okay, so you got to do it again. Double click on this last one, control enter, and then double click right here. Now, notice it didn't do it that time. That's because it's detected a blank space. So it's like, nope, not going any further till you fix that. So we have to go a little bit manually here and just go down a few of them. And I may not be exactly right about why it did that. It has something to do with a blank in here. But just do it manually for a little ways. And you can get really fast at this once you catch on to it. Then double click there. Control enter there, and then double click again, and it'll fill in a bunch more. So I haven't experimented with this enough to know which way really is the fastest, but at least you have the alternatives. This double click thing would definitely be fastest if it didn't have little gaps in it, but for now let's just do the whole scroll thing, because maybe that's better. You can play with it and figure out what you think. You can imagine this list has 280 something, and you can imagine if we had 2,000, it's going to take forever. And if you know another way around this, feel free, because I couldn't figure out any other way. I could not get it to work without having all of these things in one column. But now we got everything in one column, so let's save it. And remember what you just saved, with the name of it right there. And now we're ready to actually do the mail merge. So for that, we're opening up Microsoft Word. Go to Mailings. Click on Start Mail Merge. Labels. Make sure it's under Avery US letter. Notice there's an A4, A5. It doesn't show up right there. Every US letter has the one that you're using, and it's the 5160. If the grid doesn't show up for you and you just really like the pretty little grid, then you can go over to Layout and click on View Grid Lines. See, when you click on that, it brings up the grid lines. So now you want to select your recipients for the label and use an existing list. And remember where you had it saved is all. So we were in Downloads. And here it is. If this pops up, just hit OK. You may or may not have that. It may jump right to this. OK. Pre-populates that. If you need to just take a few out or whatever, you can do that here by unchecking or checking everything. That was Edit Recipient List. In our case, we know that it's all correct. So now we want to make sure the fields are matched, and you may only have to do this the first time. If all of these lists turn out to be the same, you may, and this is called mapping or matching the fields. So the first name on the address label, you're going to tell it which column to put the first name here, because it doesn't naturally just know that. So when you click on this drop down box, see, here's a list of all of the columns on your spreadsheet. So it's real important that you choose the right one. Like, don't accidentally, since this is the first name you choose, you don't accidentally choose last name. Make sure you choose first name. Or, you know, you could get confused if there's another person's name down here, especially when we start getting into the address stuff. There's several different addresses. You want to make sure you choose the right one. So the buyer's first name, I just selected that, and there it does, it shows up. Same thing, the last name, I've mapped it to this column, and we don't need any of this. When you go to the first address, that's, whoops, when you go to, that's why I named it address 1. And then you can skip this one, address 2, mail city, and notice we're choosing the city that is the mailing address, not the city that is where the site of the property is, because it's possible the owner of the property may live at a different location than the actual property site itself. So make sure and do that mailing one. So it's mail, city, state, and zip, and that's pretty much it. But you can see there's several different things if you ever need it. Same concept for that. And once you do this, as I said a minute ago, once you have it set, then it can choose to remember that. You can just say, remember this matching set, then you won't have to do this every time. So now that that's set, you want to choose the address block that's going to go in here. So click on address block, and if you just want first and last name and then like this suffix, you can do it like that. And here's an example. If you don't have an example over here, then you've done something wrong somewhere else. because this should show up in here. You didn't map something right, in other words. So here's the first name from this column, the second name in the first row. You know, here's our address thing, etc. And here's a shortcut to going back to that match fields place. So you click OK. Now it's put it in the first one, but we want to update the labels so that they're all like that. So click Update Labels. And unfortunately, I found out that since this particular computer is not working right because it's got a touch screen, and lovely old Microsoft, the touchscreen computers, this doesn't go through the whole page, but it should show up on every one of these labels. So if yours doesn't do that, then you must be on Ruth Ann's computer, because hers has a touch screen. You can preview the results by clicking here, and then you should see a label on every single one of these. But just don't pay attention to mine, because I'm remotely working on Ruth Ann's touchscreen computer. So you can go ahead and save it then as your label document, print it out, and that's it. You're good to go. Alright, so that's the lesson on doing a Dataquick search and creating labels with that. Let me know if you have any questions, and have a marvelously blessed and extraordinary day.